So Tencent has a market value of $146 billion today. I guess they gained $1 billion today, compared to $16 billion for Activision Blizzard, which is the largest U.S. game company. Its revenues in 2013 were $5 billion in the game segment alone, and that also makes them bigger than Activision Blizzard's revenues. So Tencent has become the biggest game company in the world, but it isn't as well known on that front in the West. And we'd like to sort of introduce you to Tencent, make you more familiar with it. So who is Tencent, and what are you focused on now?
Right, sure, thanks. Tencent's one of the very successful Chinese internet companies, and within the Chinese internet scene, usually people talk about the BATs, the large companies. Tencent's now around 150 billion. Ali, as everybody knows in the U.S., is going public soon, somewhere around 150 to 200. Baidu's around 80 or 100. The next largest, I guess, is JD, the number 2 player in e-commerce, has a strategic relationship with Tencent around 35 or 40, and pretty much everyone else is around 20 or below. So these are sort of the large Chinese internet companies that have emerged. Tencent was founded 16 years ago. The games division is around 10 years old, a bit more. And its strength in the late 90s and early O's was really based around the QQ chatting software, which emerged as sort of the dominant social messaging and social graph platform in China. As of last quarter, we reported over 800 million monthly active users of QQ on the PC. There's only around 600 million internet users in China, so people maintain multiple accounts. And then a few years ago, we very successfully rolled out WeChat, or Weixin, as it's known in China. Actually, different services. WeChat is based internationally, and Weixin within China. And then Mobile QQ, which is a similar but different service. And each of those have around 400 or 500 million monthly active users. I can go on with a lot of big numbers, but I think the net is, there's around 30 different 30 different mobile apps that Tencent has that are over 100 million monthly active users. Wow. And 10 million daily active. It's a big company with a lot of people.
Yeah. How did games first come into the picture for Tencent? And maybe Steven may answer this one.
The story is begin for 10 years ago, because all the exec team for Tencent, we are all gamer, I think. Think about I can give you the data, it's like we have a very successful game also in the Western and China is League of Legends. For me, I play 3,000 match, and our president played 1,000 match. So think about that. I think the game business in Tencent is built by the hardcore gamer, because we are gamer. We look at back to 10 years ago in China, it's definitely a very small game market, but we think look at all the people around us. They all play games. They don't have the good service. They don't have the good contents. So we are thinking about why we don't do that. Why we don't do that? We should provide some high quality content and service in China. So that's the beginning of the Tencent games.
And then how did Tencent make this transition from PC online games to mobile?
I would say it's not just transition, because for many people it's like looks like the PC market is going down, the mobile market is grows so fast. But look at our inside, our data, it looks like all the PC players still play the PC games. Look at this year's number compared to the last year. The active user for the PC market is just dropped like 5% or to 10%. It's not big. And the mobile market is a new market. Because before the mobile market exists, all the PC market is focused on the people, the age is like the teenage to the 25. But mobile game is more like the 20 to the 35. So that's another big, huge audience. It's a big new market. It's not like the PC.
And then you were talking about, say, like the quarterly growth of mobile revenues for games at Tencent. It's been very fast by the quarter, right?
Yeah, so the overall gaming market we expect will grow. Numbers aren't precise, but I think last year was around 13 billion. This year will grow another 30% to around $18 billion in China, of which 10 billion is PC, 4 billion is web, 4 billion is mobile. You know, last August we launched our mobile gaming operations at Tencent, and Q3 our mobile gaming revenue was nothing. Q4 of last year we reported $100 million. Q1 of this year $300 million. Q2 of this year $500 million. And we guided to be about flat for the rest of the year. So, you know, the analysts are expecting will be around 1.8 this year, and so we're actually expecting the overall market to actually. When I joined, I remember seeing the Nico projections. It would be, you know, grow from 2.2 to 2.9 billion dollars this year. We're actually now saying that this year will probably be around 3.9 or 4 billion dollars, the mobile gaming market in China. So, China's mobile gaming market last year was around 2 billion. This year will be 4 billion. Next year will be 6 billion. I think by comparison, the U.S. I think is supposed to grow from like 5.2 to 5.9. So by next year, when China's a $6 billion mobile market, we expect to be sharing out to our third-party mobile gaming partners around $500 million in revenue share.
So the online game industry seems bigger than the internet industry in China. I kind of wonder what it's like to have both games and internet in the same company.
I think it's very helpful for our game business because the thing about that, we are not like traditional game company. Mm-hmm. Traditional game company, they create content, they use the marketing to, you know, to the market. But for us, we are more like a user community, a player community. We have the biggest social graph in China. All the people play the games with his friends and talking about the game on our website community. So it's really helpful for us to, you know, talk to our players, and also it's great to know what they need in the futures. So what they talk about future they want, we know that. So we introduce the high quality content for that they need. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how far do you think China has moved toward games with original content?
Actually, look at the Chinese game industry history. They already happened. Chinese game industry is began from the year 2001. In that time, it's only the Korean online games. But after 4 or 5 years, or if we look at the 2006, that's the Chinese developed the MMORPGs already take like the 70% or 80% of the market share in China. But after that, because the Tencent, we introduced like the shooting games, the action games, the mobile games, that not the traditional RPG games. So looks like the game content is not created by Chinese peoples. But I think that's need another 4 or 5 years that we can see more and more contents is provided by the Chinese developers. Mm-hmm.
So China's a big market, but it's not easy to understand for Western game companies. Can you sort of help us understand what trends are important for them to understand, and maybe talk about the kind of games and genres that matter?
Right. I think so. Like Steven said, Tencent has seen good opportunities about introducing new genres into the Chinese market at the right time, and so some genres have come in and be very popular at certain times. For instance, PC era RPGs, came in first, and then over time we said, well, there should be, shooter games, there should be sports games, and so we're seeing that happen in the mobile era as well, where we've started with, certain genres have become more popular, and then as the Chinese market sort of matures and you have people moving from more casual to mid and eventually to hard, we're seeing the introduction of different genres. The China market is very difficult and incomprehensible to many Western developers. We obviously as a Chinese company have a pretty clear view as to what's going on in the marketplace, and our main responsibility is we want to bring in the world's best games to the world's best group of players. Every time a new genre gets introduced in China, it usually does come through a foreign game, not necessarily, but it does usually get introduced to a foreign game which is world-class and best in its league, to be introduced into the country, and then that introduces a whole new class of Chinese gamers to that genre. So since we have such a probably the world's largest group of gamers, we really want to get the world's best games in each of those genres to introduce to those players.
So Jeff Linden from iDream Sky was here this morning, and he pointed out a funny little difference between Chinese gamers and American gamers. And in a game like Farmville, he said, you will get your friends to help you grow your crops, right? Whereas in China, your friends will steal your vegetables. And it's very competitive. So are there some other observations you might make about gameplay differences between China and the U.S.?
I think, yes, we can see that trend is like more competition.
Mm-hmm.
You look at all our popular game like Crossfire, like the League of Legends, Dungeon Fighter. It's all based on like the PvP, the competitions, and also the Chinese people is more like the achievement orientation. The player, they are really care about their level in the whole community. So it's try to be the top in the community. So we can see that. Yeah, it's different. The Western people maybe more like exploration, more new features, but it's different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just to add to that, I mean, there are certain mechanics that actually we see similarities across different games when we bring them into China that are they're sometimes actually really simple but really helpful. For instance, newbie tutorials are extraordinarily deep and well developed in China, much more so than in the West, and where you try to get through it and get out of it really quickly. That's something almost all mobile games I see. For instance, we bring the country. There's lots of little things like that we like to share with our partners and how to make the game really successful in China.
So what are some mistakes that Western game companies make in China?
I don't know if I'd say mistakes, but I do meet a lot of people who come into China and are looking for a partner. And it is a very complicated market. And I do recommend looking for partners, be it us or others. I see a lot of people come to me and they say, we want you to guarantee a certain number of downloads. Big mistake. There's lots of downloads in China. We've got lots of people. Never negotiate for downloads. Because there's lots of different quality of different types of downloads, and no matter what number you ask for, it can be satisfied in some way that will not achieve the goals of your game itself. What's more important is to make sure that you have a partner that is looking at a long-term partnership, and that you yourself are looking at China as a serious project. I mean, with the scale of the market size, $4 billion market this year, $6 billion next year, and we're going to share out $500 million to our partners ourselves. This is not something that you put a couple of PMs and ask somebody to translate. This is a serious project. And so the most successful games that we've seen in China, the partners will put their top teams on it and make it into like a serious product. The China version of whatever product you're talking about can become an entire product team in and of itself, and can be important enough to be an important contributor to your company eventually if you take it seriously enough.
Mm-hmm. So how does Tencent work with foreign developers?
Right, so like I said, we want to find the best developers in the world, bring the best games in. There's a lot of genres out there that are really killer in the West that haven't yet arrived in China, and so the timing is actually really important. And so we look at a lot of the games that are coming out in the West, and we think, that's awesome. I'm not quite sure it's ready yet right now to bring into the market, but we'd love to talk again in 6 or 12 months, and the market does move relatively quickly. So the most important thing is to maintain a steady flow of communication and contact. We try to be very open. We have an office here in Palo Alto, and we need to do a better job at talking to everybody. But please do contact us and stay in touch continuously, and of course come visit.
Why would Tencent even be interested in markets outside of China if China is growing so fast, right? And you could really stay there and be a very fast growth company. Why be a global game company?
Yeah, I think that the story I've heard from the leadership is that with 30-40% growth every year for the past half-decade or decade or so, Tencent has spent most of its time just running as fast as possible to keep up with the growth in the Chinese gaming market and the Chinese internet market in general. And that has been a great market and continues to be a major focus to us. Along the way, we've discovered that we've had some great partnerships with international gaming companies that have really helped us as a company and really brought a lot of value to the users. And so we look abroad to find the world's best games so that we can bring them into China. and I think that we've done a fairly, I hope we've done a fairly good job, historically of proving those partnerships to be successful, and that's really a core element, because the world's most immersive, most impressive, most leading edge, whether it's game design or gameplay or games overall, still seems mostly to be happening in the West.
Yeah. And you've made investments in Activision Blizzard and Epic Games and Riot Games, but you haven't, say, acquired these companies outright. There's some strategy in that, I assume. And what's sort of the larger strategy of being global as well?
Yeah, I think Tencent's a really interesting Chinese company because we say it's actually an international company that comes from China as opposed to being a Chinese company. Because if you look at the company, 4 of the top 10 members of the company are actually foreigners. Martin Lau, our president, from Hong Kong, used to work at Goldman, helped us go public originally, then hired his colleague at Goldman, James Mitchell, who headed up Goldman's global digital tech practice. We have David Wallerstein, based here in San Francisco, our senior executive vice president, and our general counsel, Brent Irvin, is actually a former partner from the Valley at Wilson, who came out, speaks fluent Chinese and came out, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, to join us. So there's no other Chinese company that even come close to that level of internationalization. I think the leadership team recognized relatively early on that we don't have necessarily the management bandwidth or muscle to handle trying to manage a lot of international offices, especially because China's growing so fast. And so we've been very focused on finding really strong partners that are led by really strong teams that we really want to work with on a long-term basis, and then providing them the resources that they need, or we can try to help, whatever we can try to help, whether it's resources or knowledge, to help them be extremely successful. And that sort of helps us all along as sort of a loose alliance as opposed to something different.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the prospect for a single global gaming market? Is it already here, or do you feel like it's coming?
In case I say something wrong, he'll correct me. We look at different markets, and we see a lot of similarities between, for instance, China and Korea, where we can see where Korea is, today, and then, or we can see where China is today and say, oh, Korea was there 12 months ago, and so we can learn a lot from the Korean market. It's culturally very similar. The gameplay is very similar. Obviously, Crossfire and DNF being from Korea, we've had big successes there. Mm-hmm. The West, obviously the game design going on in Europe and Northern Europe has in the mobile game space has been incredibly impressive. We think that there's a ton of really strong companies here in America as well. Japan's a little bit different. I think Chinese people find Japanese market just as different as Americans do. It seems to have its own sort of rather unique places. But we look to the American market for a lot of inspiration on what is the cutting edge, what is the new, cool, hot, hip thing that is happening.
Kim Kardashian, right? Yeah.
Not sure.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't know. We have different celebrities.
Yeah. Do we have any questions from the audience here? Anybody? Okay, there's one right there. Somebody have a microphone? There we go.
I'd just love to ask about your monetization. How much comes from like in-game ads versus add-ons that players purchase, or how? Could you kind of give us a breakdown of the gaming revenue? Thanks.
Right. So for monetization, first of all, we don't consider monetization to be the key is for us really engagement and retention. If it's a great game and people are spending a lot of time in it, then eventually there will be a way to figure out monetization. So we don't actually do in-app advertising or in-game advertising. All of our monetization comes from microtransactions and user. The microtransaction market in China, the free-to-play market in China is actually much older and I would say more well-developed than it is in the Western world, because we've been doing it for over a decade now. So that's the main form of monetization.
And I thought I saw one more hand over there. Yeah.
Hi. You talk a little bit about parallels to the Korean market, where you have esports organization like KESPA, and now there are player unions in China like ACE that are starting to really become dominant in the market. And I was wondering what your relationship to major esports organizations were, if that's part of your strategy. Or
Esports.
Yeah, no, I mean, we view it as a really, an important value-added service that helps the community of players and allows them a chance to. I mean, obviously, League is the one of the big examples for us, and I think we just had one of the League events where I saw the intense passion and craziness of the users. That it was great to see. We have relationships with, I think, almost all of the major organizations, certainly in our territories. And we view it as really valuable events where the community can come together in an offline setting, and have sort of these climactic moments in between their online engagements.
Cool. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much.